problem with government bureaucracy being the sole narrative is that this doesn't really line up with history. There's two main things going on. Government agencies in the US are much more lean than the average corporation, minus things like the Pentagon, law enforcement, intelligence agencies, and the military at large. Essentially things that are set up to kill people and protect corporate interests. This is important because the stereotype of government bloat is usually labeled around welfare systems, public services that help average citizens, or annoying licensing processes, like the DMV. The large agencies like the military are pretty much at this point wings of the private sector, spearheaded by Boeing, Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, etc. As that's where the bulk of taxpayer money goes to. Private weapons manufacturing. We will get to this in point 2. That said, government services are typically forced to do more with less. And that has actually always been the case in American history. This isn't a new phenomenon. The idea of social services being bloated, overfunded, is a complete and utter ahistorical fabrication of reality. That has quite literally never been the case in American history. What has been the case is a military that purchases $8,000 coffee makers and $37 screws in 1986, mind you. Yes, 1986. The relationship with bloat, bureaucracy, is primarily seen with the convergence of social services or state functions colliding with the private sector. Trillion-dollar military budgets, absurdly expensive pharmaceuticals, and private healthcare costs are driven up by primarily price-fixing profiteers and government entities happy to subsidize it. You know what isn't bloated? Teacher salaries, public defendant salaries, and social worker pay. Graeber states,
"The standard argument for privatization is that the private sector is inherently more efficient than the public sector. This argument is rooted in a particular understanding of bureaucracy as inherently wasteful and incompetent. However, the reality is often quite different. When functions are privatized, the result is often not a decrease in bureaucracy, but rather an increase in it. The private sector frequently introduces its own complex layers of administrative overhead, with less transparency and accountability. Instead of reducing bureaucratic costs, privatization often merely shifts them to less visible, more opaque forms of management. This shift can result in greater overall expenses for the state, as the cost of managing and monitoring private contracts can be substantial.